We are here at the Winter Antique Show live, and this is Savannah Bailey McLean early in the morning with Thomas Henich. And he is a fine arts book dealer based in London. And we are here to talk about the sale of his book, Le Tombe Noir. And that was a book with about 43 images that were crafted by Paul Colin.
Yes, indeed. It was Paul Colin. Paul Colin was perhaps the greatest of the French Art Deco poster designers, painters. He was an artist poster designer in the 1920s in Paris.
And this was really special because the images he took were of the black jazz artists and dancers who left the United States and went to Paris to do the La Revue Nègre.
La Revue Nègre, which it's a very interesting phenomenon because, of course, during the First World War, a lot of American soldiers came to Europe.
Right.
And with them, they brought jazz, which began to excite poets and artists. Poets like Jean Cocteau, Apollinaire, Blaise Cendrars were all excited by jazz just after the First World War. And at the same time, the painters, the Cubist painters, Braque, Picasso, Derain had a large collection of African art, which influenced their painting.
Cubism.
So Cubism and American jazz and the culture of Black America's music and dance was brought by an impresario to put on this tremendous show in the Théâtre du Champs-Élysées, which was called La Revue Nègre. And it burst upon Paris. It was both exciting, shocking, amazing. It was something that the European audience had never seen before. It was terribly exciting. And the star of the show was, of course, Josephine Baker. It was her first visit to Europe, and she virtually never went back. She was so captivated by life in Europe. And Colin, who had designed the poster for the revue, and she became lovers.
Yes.
And he produced this book, which is a book of images, not of words, although there is a letter from Josephine Baker in it. It's a book of images and words to show the excitement, the vivacity of Josephine and the other artists there. Harlem Renaissance, which of course you would know more about than me, but it had it all. It was a blending and a mixing of cultures.
And see, that's what I would like to talk about, is that Harlem Renaissance. I mean, Josephine Baker was called the Black Pearl. And she loved Paris because it was so free for her. She didn't have to deal with the restrictions in the United States. And she grew up very poor. She grew up in Illinois, and her parents split, and her mother kind of lent her out to be, a maid. And she hated it because oftentimes she did not get food. She didn't have shelter very often, and that really impacted her quite much. She learned to be a dancer, and then she left because of the riots in Illinois, and she came to New York City, to Harlem. And that's how she got involved with the Renaissance, because it was bubbling up, because the war had broken out, and white soldiers went off to war, but that freed up jobs. And so therefore, Black Americans were able to fill those jobs and also to have a little bit of latitude with their lives. She actually performed with U.B. Blake and Noble Seabliss, who was doing Broadway shows like Shuffle Along, and they thought she was too skinny and not very pretty. So they didn't think she was going to work out, but she worked very hard on the chorus line and proved them wrong and became a sensation. By the time she got to Paris, she was making double what she started when she first came to New York.
Well, she ended up quite wealthy, didn't she?
Oh, yes, she did.
Perhaps it was her skinniness that appealed to the French audience. But the other thing, of course, were her amazing clothes and dresses.
Yes.
And one of the images in the book, which you can see, sadly your radio audience can't, was this amazing banana dress.
Yes.
Where there she was, virtually naked.
Yes, virtually naked.
Or perhaps showing off all her finer features. Wearing this dress made of, effectively, bananas.
Yes.
Not a grass skirt, a banana skirt.
Yes.
And it was the most exciting thing. It turned on the French audience.
It was very sexual.
It was terribly sexual. But the whole of the dancing was sexual. And if you look through the images in this book, if you turn over the page there, for instance, you'll see this image of mixed race dancing
Yes.
in a very highly erotic manner.
Yes.
That, of course, wouldn't have been known in New York at the time, I suppose. Perhaps
Well,
it would,
a little
or...
bit, because the jazz age has started.
So that's it.
The jazz age has started, and then you had white women, who were trying to get out of those structures in their dresses, and they wanted to be more free. And because they wanted to be more free, they decided that they would be even more experimental. So they had their hairs cut short, and they wore the flapper dresses, and they would engage in sexual encounters with Negro men at that time. So it was quite exciting, to say the least.
Now, you told me what Josephine was known as there, but of course, Colin, in this book, refers to as the Empress Josephine. And that's a take on Napoleon's wife, Josephine.
Yes.
Who came from the Caribbean,
Yes.
remember?
Yes.
And so you have an exciting mixture and blend. Colin obviously worshipped her. And he gave, this copy of the book was given to André Davant, who was the promoter, of the founder of La Revue Nègre. And so it is the most delightful thing all round, because it marries Europe to New York. It mixes everything in a delightful way. Sadly, none of your listeners can come and buy it.
No.
Because it has actually found a new home.
I heard, and we want to bring in Michael, because Michael Diaz-Griffith is the associate director of the Winter Show, and we wanted to talk to him too about the impact of this fair and how rare books like this one was able to sell so quickly. So I'm going to have him sit down and tell us a little bit about how the show actually impacted the sale of this book.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you today. Well, the fair, as you know, has been running for 65 years. And this is our 65th anniversary Sapphire Jubilee.
Congratulations.
Thank you. A cause for great celebration. And something we focused on with a lot of intentionality this year is keeping the fair fresh, even as we celebrate its legacy, its identity, its history. And as a part of that mission, we have integrated over the past few years contemporary material into the fair.
Okay.
And we've also come to celebrate the rare objects that really form the backbone of the offerings at the show. There are many art fairs out there, many antique shows, and they're fabulous.
Yes, they are.
But something that we're really proud of is that for 65 years, exhibitors have worked throughout each of those years to surface the most extraordinary items to bring to this fair in particular. And they still do that today.
I have to say, this is the best fair. This is my third Winter Antique Show. This one is very exciting. I have to give you credit for that.
We have to give our exhibitors credit for it. I think, we're at a turning point in the decorative arts market, which the fair is rooted very deeply in, where in order to communicate with a new generation of collectors, we have to demonstrate more forcefully than ever the interest that is in this material. Now, with rare books and prints, which have been in the show for a long time, but we have a stronger showing of them than ever.
Okay.
The interest is often, it's very different from with objects.
Okay.
And I think that Thomas has spoken to the particular interest that books and prints have. We're very excited about them because they connect us to cultural histories, literary histories that haven't been explored as deeply in the past at the show. But whatever the object, we're more interested than ever in tapping into our exhibitors' storytelling abilities, framing that storytelling tradition that you find in this part of the art market so that the public can hear the most compelling stories about the material. And we think that those stories draw them into the world of collecting, draw them deeper into the context of the fair.
Well, this caught my attention when I was visiting the fair on opening day, caught the book in the corner of my eye, and asked Thomas to take the book out.
You have a very sharp eye.
That she does.
Because in cities across the United States, as I was sharing with him, they are beginning celebrations through various programs to honor the centennial of the New Negro movement and the Harlem Renaissance. And a lot of people don't understand that time period because the New Negro movement was primarily here in New York, in Harlem. And it was a very radical social movement because you had Southern blacks coming north around the time of World War I because they needed workers. Then you also had a mix of Caribbean blacks who also came because of hurricanes. And so this mixture of people came together and they're living together, and now the Caribbeans noticed something was wrong. And they noticed that the American blacks were being persecuted heavily. So they worked together to try to showcase what they called the new Negro. And this new Negro was educated, was engaged, was involved, and out of that came the arts and culture that we know today as the Harlem Renaissance. So when I saw the book, I was like, do you realize how important this book is? And the timing of it. And he said, I didn't know. And I said, oh, no, we have to talk about this book.
I love it. But it enfolds all of that history, which is what a great object can do. And I think, to speak to the context of the fair, it's imperative that this story be told here now.
Yes.
There is a display in the booth of Ellie Shushin.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it. It's it's a series of photographs called Forefathers. And each photograph is of a slave-owning president of the United States.
Wow.
The photographs appear to be peeled back right over the face. And behind each of those presidents' faces is the face of an African American.
Wow.
Today, who may be a descendant of one of those president's slaves. It's an incredibly moving series, and I'm proud that story is being told at the show just as this one is. This is the right context for that because we're a fair that celebrates and thinks about history.
Yes.
And I think that's what you've done today.
Yes.
We're finding these untold stories, and what better place to do that
Than here.
And it's something we have to do justice to our material culture and, of course, our cultural history and its legacies.
I love the books because from a child, I was a book reader. I was a ferocious reader. And, with technology today, where everyone is trying to run away from books, it's so nice that you can run towards a book.
Yes.
And
I
you
love
can feel the pages and look at the colors and smell the bindery. It's like, it's amazing. You wouldn't imagine a book having that much energy towards it, but it does,
They do.
because it's something about books, and we take it all for granted, and we shouldn't. I mean, because we don't know what will ever happen to these books. But what's also nice about it is that when we have gone on and transitioned, the books will still be there.
They
The
will.
stories will still be
They
there.
will. They will. And I think what you're speaking to is the importance of objects, of tactility, of smell, of materials, which are things that I think we're all coming to celebrate and appreciate more in the digital age, with books and with objects generally. It's something is lost
Yeah.
when we're only looking at words on a screen.
Yes.
Something is lost. And whatever that something is, however we frame it for ourselves, we have to make sure we keep a bit of it.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing today.
Yes, I love this, and I think this is great what the fair has done. Again, this is one of the best fairs that I've attended of the Winter Antique Show. I think the quality of all of the exhibitors has been top-notch.
Oh, we're so glad you think so.
Yes, I really do, and it's not just the books, it's the paintings, it's the framing. It's the way people, design their booth. It's engaging. They want you to come in.
Yes.
That's what I think a fair should do.
Yes. Well, we are so proud of our exhibitors for bringing vibrant, fresh, intriguing material this year, like Thomas's.
Well,
Yes.
And
I really like showing here. I've exhibited at fairs in the United States, other ones. I've exhibited in Paris, in Switzerland, in Holland regularly, in Britain, of course. This is the most fun. It's the nicest, most friendly fair to do. It's the one where there seems to be the closest interchange with the public, who certainly feel free to ask. They're delighted when they're allowed to touch and handle beautiful
Yes.
things. It's, there's a funny element of education in it. It's teaching people, and they can open up and feel free to learn, to appreciate. I find it quite exciting like that, and we bring things here that anyone can afford. I think our cheapest book on the booth is $15.
yes.
Oh, wow.
And you might say it's crazy to do that. Well, obviously, we're not getting rich on selling those. But on the other hand, we're developing a market, and we're showing
Yes.
people what we do.
Yes.
And the things that we've sold here have gone to major museums already.
Yes.
And that tells you everything.
It
Now,
does.
I like what you said. You offer something for as little as $15, because a lot of times people feel these fairs are just for the wealthy. It's really
true.
for everybody.
It is.
And so they can have this little item that they could keep and that they could share with family and
Yeah.
friends and pass it on and build an interest. It's not
Yes.
just an object. It's about that story,
An
about
experience.
that. Yes,
Yes.
about that object.
We sell and have sold here to artists, to students. They can all come, they can look, and they can buy, and it's just an interesting and reasonable experience. Often I find that people can be slightly intimidated by the idea of art fairs.
Yes.
And I think it's very important that they should learn that art fairs are open to all. You can develop an interest, or you can just look.
Yes.
You can just look, and I have one tip for anyone who's new to art fairs. Be brave, approach the exhibitors, and ask questions. They are desperate to talk to you. They love telling their stories, and they've actually invested in having a space where you will approach them to ask those questions. That's what they want more than anything. And Thomas will answer any question you posit.
Yes, and I like to let
he's here
people
to-
turn over the pages of these grand books.
Like you did for me.
I
When
did
you
say,
s-
I think I
This
asked
is
you
the
if
fruit of
hoped
one of those
you hadn't eaten
encounters.
marmalade with your fingers for breakfast.
Yeah.
Because we don't want sticky fingers on our books. But that aside, we don't expect people to wear gloves. Well, because gloves, after all, you lose the sensation in your fingers.
Yes.
This is about tactile, sensory. It's about visual pleasure. come and see us.
But no, when I saw that book, you said, "Do you want to see it? Let me pull it out of the case."
But of
And then you
course.
put it on the stand, and we flipped through the pages.
And I had no idea who you were. You
Yes.
could have been the richest woman in New York, or you could be the poorest. But I treat everyone the same
Yes.
and show things to them. Because you never know.
You
and
never
you
know.
never know how much money somebody has or what they might want to buy.
Or how much money they may have in the future.
Yes,
This
true,
is something I speak to many exhibitors about. Even if someone doesn't fall in love with a $15 book and carry it out of the fair, even if they're just interested in old masters' pictures, they can come here and train their eye. They can have conversations that influence their future collecting practice. It's never too early to begin.
That's right.
So we want for people to treat this place like a museum,
Yes.
but one where you can touch
That's
and
the
feel
important thing,
the
yes.
objects and really interact with them in a way that you won't be able to
Right.
after they're all scooped up by museums and taken
Yes.
into those collections.
Yes.
Yes, I always love selling things to private collectors. There's that little touch of passion.
Indeed.
And Josephine has left the United States
Yes.
and gone back to her beloved France.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I had such a great time talking with both of you. All right.